This chapter is over.
Michael Lane stood outside his wife's office building, holding a small velvet box containing a vintage Cartier watch he'd saved 3 months to afford. Rachel's text from an hour ago still glowed on his phone. "I got the promotion, Senior VP of Marketing, can you believe it?" He could believe it. Rachel had worked 16-hour days for 2 years, sacrificing family dinners and weekend plans. She deserved this moment, and he wanted to share it with her. The elevator climbed to the 32nd floor of Hartwell Industries, where glass offices reflected the afternoon sun across downtown Portland. Michael adjusted his tie, the blue one Rachel had bought him for their anniversary, and stepped into the gleaming reception area. "Excuse me," he said to the blonde receptionist. "I'm looking for Rachel Lane. I'm her husband." The young woman's expression shifted slightly. "Oh, she's in a meeting right now. I'll wait. This is a celebration." Michael held up the small gift bag. A man in his 20s walked past, coffee in hand. He glanced at Michael, then at the receptionist, and smirked. "Your wife's with the CEO." Thanking him for the promotion, if you know what I mean. The receptionist gave the man a sharp look, but the damage was done. Michael's grip tightened on the gift bag. "Which office?" Michael asked quietly. "Mr. Lane, I really think you should—" "Which office?" She pointed down the hall to a set of mahogany doors. "The corner office, but they asked not to be disturbed." Michael walked down the polished hallway, his footsteps muffled by expensive carpet. He could hear voices through the door, Rachel's laugh, high and breathless, and a deeper male voice responding. His hand hesitated on the brass handle. Then he heard it clearly. "You earned this promotion on your back, sweetheart." Michael opened the door. Rachel sat on the lap of a silver-haired man Michael recognized from company photos. Victor Kane, CEO and founder of Hartwell Industries. Her blazer was unbuttoned, her hand resting on Kane's chest. They both turned toward the door with lazy confidence, like cats interrupted while playing with prey. "Michael," Rachel said, not moving from Kane's lap, "this isn't what it looks like." Kane's smile was predatory. "Actually, it's exactly what it looks like. Your wife chose the real man, Lane, the one who can actually provide for her." Michael stood perfectly still, taking in the scene. The half-empty champagne bottle on Kane's desk, Rachel's flushed face, the way Kane's hand rested possessively on her hip. "I brought you a gift," Michael said calmly, setting the bag on the conference table near the door. "A surprise." Rachel finally stood, smoothing her skirt. "Michael, let me explain." "No need." Michael pulled out his phone and held it up. The camera made a soft click as he captured both of them in the frame. Rachel's disheveled hair, Kane's smug expression, the intimate distance between them. Kane's face darkened. "Delete that, now." Michael pocketed his phone. "Congratulations on your promotion, Rachel. You really did earn it." He turned and walked out, leaving the gift bag unopened on the table. In the elevator, Michael stared at the photo on his phone. Crystal clear. Rachel's hand still on Kane's chest, both of them looking directly at the camera with expressions that told the whole story. He forwarded the image to his personal email, then to a cloud storage account he'd set up years ago for work documents. The elevator opened on the ground floor, and Michael walked through the lobby with measured steps. Several employees glanced at him curiously. News traveled fast in corporate environments, and his unscheduled visit wouldn't go unnoticed. Outside, he sat in his truck for 10 minutes, letting his breathing return to normal. Then he opened his laptop and began researching Victor Kane. The first search revealed the usual corporate biography. Stanford MBA, 20 years building Hartwell Industries from a regional logistics company into a national player. Married to philanthropist Catherine Kane, 2 grown daughters, homes in Portland and Aspen. The second search, using different keywords, revealed more interesting information. A workplace misconduct lawsuit filed 3 years ago by a former marketing director, settled out of court with a confidentiality agreement. Another case from 5 years back, same pattern. Both women had worked directly under Kane before their sudden departures. Michael bookmarked everything and drove home to their suburban house in Lake Oswego, the place he'd been paying for with overtime shifts at Columbia River Shipping, where he managed logistics for mid-size freight operations. Honest work that paid well enough to afford the mortgage, Rachel's car payments, and the lifestyle she increasingly demanded. Rachel's Mercedes wasn't in the driveway yet. She'd probably stayed late to manage the situation with Kane. Inside, Michael found his 18-year-old son, Evan, at the kitchen table, laptop open, textbooks scattered around him. The kid looked up with the kind of instant awareness that reminded Michael of his own father, a man who'd taught him to observe first, act second. "Dad, you're home early. Mom said you were bringing her something for the promotion." Michael sat down across from him. "Change of plans. How's the journalism class going? Evan studied his father's expression. Fine. We're learning about investigative reporting. Why? Just curious. What kind of sources do real journalists use when they're researching a story? Primary sources are best. Financial records, legal documents, interviews with people who actually witnessed events. Why are you asking? Michael opened his laptop and showed Evan the search results about Kane's legal troubles. Hypothetically, if someone wanted to verify whether these settlements really happened, where would they look? Evan leaned forward, reading the screen. Court records are public, even if the settlements aren't. You can see when cases were filed and when they were dismissed. Employment records might show patterns, like if several women left the same company around the same time these cases were active. And if someone wanted to contact these women, that would be harder, but not impossible. LinkedIn, professional associations. Sometimes they land at competitor companies. Evan paused. Dad, is this about Mom's boss? Michael closed the laptop. Your mother's having an affair. Evan absorbed this information with the same calm assessment he'd inherited from his father. The CEO? Victor Kane. I walked in on them today. Jesus, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm looking for justice. Evan nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Over the next week, Michael established a routine. Every morning, he drove to the coffee shop across from Hartwell Industries and observed the building through the large windows. He noted patterns. Who arrived when, who left together, which cars belonged to which executives. Kane drove a black Tesla Model S and always parked in the same reserved spot. He arrived between 7:45 and 8 a.m., often with a different woman walking beside him to the elevator. Some were Hartwell employees Michael recognized from company directories he'd found online. Others appeared to be clients or consultants. On Thursday, Michael watched Kane leave the building with a young brunette who looked upset. She sat in her car for 10 minutes after Kane drove away, crying into her hands. When she finally composed herself and walked back into the building, Michael memorized her license plate. That evening, Evan presented his research. The woman you saw crying? Her name is Jennifer Walsh. She's a junior account executive, been with Hartwell for 8 months. Before that, she worked for a marketing firm in Seattle. How did you find that out? LinkedIn, company directory cross-reference, and a little social media investigation. She posts a lot about work stress lately. Cryptic stuff about inappropriate workplace dynamics and knowing when to speak up. Michael added Jennifer's name to a growing list in a notebook he kept locked in his home office. What about the women from the lawsuits? I found both of them. Sandra Thompson works for a competitor in San Francisco now. Lisa Kim moved to Chicago and started her own consulting firm. Both left Hartwell abruptly. Thompson gave 2 weeks' notice on a Monday and was gone by Friday. Kim was terminated for performance reasons the same week she filed her maltreatment complaint. Performance reasons? That's what the HR records show, but here's the interesting part. Both women had received positive performance reviews just weeks before their departures. Thompson was actually up for a promotion. Michael studied the timeline Evan had constructed. The pattern was clear. Kane identified attractive female employees, used his position to initiate inappropriate relationships, then eliminated them when they became problems. The legal settlements kept everything quiet, and the women moved on with their careers damaged but intact. There's something else, Evan said. I think I found a current victim. He showed Michael a series of Instagram posts from Sarah Patel, Hartwell's HR manager. Recent photos showed her looking increasingly stressed, with captions about workplace challenges and standing up for what's right. She's been posting about ethical dilemmas at work, never names anyone specifically, but the timing matches with when these other situations happened. I think she knows about Kane's pattern, but feels trapped. Michael closed the notebook. I need to talk to her. Sarah Patel met Michael at a small cafe in Southeast Portland, 20 minutes from the Hartwell building. She'd agreed to the meeting after he'd sent her a carefully worded LinkedIn message about workplace culture concerns and shared experiences. She was smaller than he'd expected based on her corporate photo, with tired eyes and the careful posture of someone always looking over her shoulder. I'm not sure why I agreed to this, she said, stirring her latte nervously. If Victor finds out I'm talking to you, he won't, and I'm not recording this conversation. Your wife really did get promoted on merit, Sarah said quickly. Her marketing campaigns have generated significant revenue increases. I want to be clear about that. But, Sarah was quiet for a long moment, there was no formal promotion process. Victor bypassed the usual HR protocols. He just announced Rachel's new position in a staff meeting and had me process the paperwork afterward. Michael sipped his coffee and waited. This is how it usually works, Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor identifies someone he's interested in. He finds ways to work closely with them on projects. He offers mentorship, career advancement, opportunities that other employees don't get, and gradually the professional relationship becomes personal. What happens to women who refuse his advances? Their projects get reassigned, their performance reviews become critical, they're excluded from important meetings. Eventually, they quit or get terminated for cause. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she lifted her cup. I have to process all the paperwork. I see the patterns. Why don't you report it? Sarah laughed bitterly. To whom? Victor owns 60% of the company. The board consists of his golf buddies and business school classmates. The company's legal counsel has been handling his personal NDAs for years. What about the state labor board? The EEOC? With what evidence? Everything happens behind closed doors. The women who could testify have signed confidentiality agreements. And the ones who haven't. She trailed off. The ones who haven't what? They're afraid. Victor has connections throughout the industry. He can make sure they never work in marketing or logistics again. It's a small community in Portland. Michael leaned forward. What would it take to build a case that couldn't be suppressed? Sarah studied his face. Are you working with a lawyer? Not yet, but I'm thinking about it. You'd need documentation, financial records showing inappropriate use of company funds, evidence of the quid pro quo arrangements, testimony from multiple women willing to break their NDAs and face legal retaliation. Sarah shook her head. It would take months of investigation and a legal team willing to take on a powerful defendant with unlimited resources. What if the case built itself? What if Victor's pattern became so obvious that it couldn't be ignored? What do you mean? Michael pulled out his phone and showed her the photo of Rachel and Kane. Sarah's eyes widened. When was this taken? Last Thursday, in his office during business hours. Sarah stared at the image. This could be the smoking tool, evidence of the inappropriate relationship taken on company property during work hours. It corroborates everything we've suspected but couldn't prove. Would you be willing to verify company policies that were violated? Sarah hesitated. If I could do it safely, if there were legal protections. What if I told you there might be other women ready to come forward? Women who aren't bound by NDAs because their cases never went to court? Like who? Michael told her about Jennifer Walsh, the account executive he'd seen crying in the parking lot, about his plans to contact Sandra Thompson and Lisa Kim, about the pattern of behavior that had destroyed careers and lives while Kane faced no consequences. If enough women speak publicly, the NDAs become meaningless, Michael said. Kane can't sue everyone. And once the story becomes public, the board will have to act to protect the company's reputation. Sarah was quiet for several minutes, staring into her coffee. I have copies of all the HR files, she finally said. Promotion records, performance reviews, termination paperwork. I keep duplicate records of everything because I've been documenting the pattern for my own protection. Would you be willing to share those records with a journalist? If I had legal immunity and protection from retaliation? Sarah looked up at him. Are you really going to do this? Take on Victor Kane? Michael thought about Rachel's hand on Kane's chest, about the smug satisfaction in Kane's voice when he'd called himself the real man, about 18 years of marriage dissolved in one moment of corporate arrogance. He destroyed my marriage, Michael said, but more importantly, he's been destroying women's careers for years. Someone needs to stop him. Sarah nodded slowly. I know a journalist, Amy Chen, at the Portland Business Journal. She's been trying to investigate workplace maltreatment in the tech and logistics industries, but companies keep stonewalling her. Would she be interested in a story with documentation? If we can prove the pattern with multiple sources, yes. She's aggressive, and she doesn't back down from powerful defendants. Michael smiled for the first time in a week. And let's give her a story she can't ignore. The plan developed over the following month. Sarah provided copies of personnel files showing the pattern of rapid promotions, followed by sudden departures. Evan used his journalism class connections to track down Sandra Thompson and Lisa Kim, both of whom agreed to speak on the record about their experiences with Kane. Jennifer Walsh was harder to convince. She met Michael and Sarah at a restaurant in Beaverton, far from downtown Portland and the Hartwell offices. I can't afford to lose this job, she said, picking at her salad. I have student loans and rent. If Victor blacklists me, I'm finished. He's already marked you, Sarah said gently. The pattern is always the same. Right now, he's evaluating whether you're worth the risk. If you cooperate, you get promoted. If you resist, you get eliminated. But I haven't resisted anything yet. He's never actually propositioned me. Michael leaned forward. What about the meeting in his office last Thursday? When you left crying? Jennifer's face flushed. How did you know about that? I saw you in the parking lot. You looked upset. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. He called me in to discuss the Morrison account. But then he started asking personal questions about my relationship status, my living situation. He offered to help me find a better apartment, maybe something closer to his neighborhood. She paused. When I said I was happy with my current place, he got different, colder. He said my work on the Morrison account needed improvement and maybe I wasn't ready for increased responsibilities. Classic intimidation, Sarah said. He's testing your boundaries. Next, he'll create a crisis that only he can solve, maybe threaten your position on a key account, then offer to fix everything in exchange for personal favors. You're saying I'm already a target? I'm saying you have a choice, Michael said. You can wait for him to destroy your career on his timeline, or you can help us destroy his career on ours. Jennifer looked between them. What kind of help? Sarah explained about the journalist, about the other women who'd agreed to speak publicly, about the documentation they'd assembled. We need someone currently inside the company to verify recent incidents, Michael said. Someone who can speak to Kane's current behavior, not just historical patterns. What about your wife? Jennifer asked. She's the most recent promotion. If she testified about what she had to do to get it. Michael's jaw tightened. Rachel won't cooperate. She thinks Kane is going to leave his wife for her. Will he? Men like Kane don't leave their wives. They just keep collecting mistresses until they get caught. Jennifer nodded slowly. If I do this, what kind of protection do I have? Sarah pulled out a folder. Whistleblower protections under Oregon state law. Federal protections if we can show a pattern of civil rights violations. And once the story breaks, Victor won't be in a position to retaliate against anyone. What's the timeline? 2 weeks, Michael said. The company's annual gala is Friday night. Most of the board will be there, plus major clients and industry contacts. If we break the story that week, it'll have maximum impact. Jennifer stared out the window at the parking lot, considering her options. I'll do it, she finally said. But I want to record our next conversation with Victor. If he propositions me directly, I want proof. Amy Chen from the Portland Business Journal met with Michael's group the following Tuesday. She was younger than Michael had expected, with sharp eyes and the aggressive confidence of someone accustomed to asking uncomfortable questions. This is explosive, she said, reviewing the documents spread across the conference table at Sarah's lawyer's office. Personnel files showing systematic maltreatment, financial records indicating misuse of company funds, testimony from multiple victims spanning 5 years. Is it enough for a story? Michael asked. It's enough for a federal investigation. The financial irregularities alone could trigger SEC scrutiny. Amy looked up from her notes. But I need to verify a few details before publication. I'll need to contact Hartwell Industries for comment, which means Victor Kane will know the story is coming. How much advance warning will he get? I'm required to give companies reasonable time to respond to allegations, usually 48 hours. Sarah frowned. That's enough time for him to destroy evidence or intimidate witnesses. It's also enough time for him to panic and make mistakes, Michael said. Men like Kane don't handle public exposure well. He'll probably overreact. Amy gathered her papers. I'll have a draft ready by Thursday. If everything checks out, the story runs Friday morning, the same day as your gala. After Amy left, the group sat in silence, processing the reality of what they'd set in motion. Are we doing the right thing? Jennifer asked. Sarah nodded firmly. We're protecting future victims, women who don't even know their targets yet. Michael thought about Rachel, about the choice she'd made in Kane's office, about the 18 years of marriage that had evaporated in one moment of corporate ambition. We're making sure actions have consequences, he said, something Victor Kane has never experienced. Thursday evening, Michael sat in his truck across from Hartwell Industries, watching the lights in Kane's office. Amy Chen had called that afternoon to confirm the story would run the following morning, and she'd contacted Kane's office for comment around 3 p.m. Since then, Kane's Tesla had remained in its parking spot, and the lights in the corner office had stayed on. Through the windows, Michael could see figures moving around. Kane, Rachel, and what appeared to be several other executives in crisis mode. His phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Michael ignored it. Another text. I know what you're doing. Stop it now or you'll destroy everything. Then, I made a mistake, but I love you. We can fix this. Finally, answer your phone already. Michael turned off his phone and continued watching the building. At 10 p.m., Kane finally emerged, walking quickly to his Tesla with Rachel beside him. They appeared to be arguing. Rachel gestured animatedly, while Kane stared straight ahead with the expression of a man who'd just realized his empire was crumbling. They drove away separately, Rachel in her Mercedes, Kane in his Tesla. Michael started his truck and followed Kane, staying several cars back through downtown Portland's late-night traffic. Kane drove to a high-end hotel near the airport. Michael watched him check in alone, carrying a single overnight bag, running, or at least preparing to. Michael drove home where Evan was waiting with a laptop and several printed pages. The story just posted online, Evan said. Amy Chen's editor released it early. They were worried about legal injunctions. Michael read the headline, Hartwell Industries CEO accused of systematic misconduct and misuse of company funds. The article was devastating. Amy had corroborated every detail, including financial records showing Kane had used company credit cards to pay for hotel rooms where he met with female employees. The photo of Rachel in Kane's office was prominently featured, alongside testimony from Sandra Thompson, Lisa Kim, and Jennifer Walsh. It's already been shared 200 times on social media, Evan said. The company's stock price is going to tank when markets open. Michael's phone, which he'd turned back on, showed 47 missed calls and 31 text messages. Most were from Rachel, increasingly desperate as the evening progressed. The most recent, "You've ruined me. I hope you're satisfied." Michael typed back, "You ruined yourself. I just documented it." Friday morning brought chaos. Michael's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting comment, co-workers asking if he'd seen the news, lawyers offering to represent him in the inevitable divorce proceedings. At 9 a.m., Evan showed him the follow-up coverage. Every major business publication in the Pacific Northwest had picked up the story. Cable news was running segments about corporate maltreatment culture. Hartwell Industries' stock had dropped 30% in pre-market trading. By noon, Victor Kane had been placed on administrative leave pending a board investigation. Rachel had been suspended indefinitely. 3 other female employees had come forward with additional allegations, and the state attorney general's office had announced a preliminary inquiry into the company's business practices. Michael drove to the Hartwell building to observe the aftermath. The parking lot was filled with news vans and reporters. Security guards blocked the main entrance, directing employees to a side door. Kane's reserved parking space stood empty. His phone rang. Sarah Patel. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better than expected. You?" "Relieved and terrified, but mostly relieved." Sarah paused. "The board called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. They're going to ask for Victor's resignation." "Will he give it?" "He doesn't have a choice. The company's reputation is in free fall, and the board needs to distance themselves from him to survive." "What about Rachel?" "Her suspension will probably become permanent. The board can't keep someone who was so visibly involved in the scandal." Michael felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Rachel had made her choice, but watching her career implode in real time was harder than he'd expected. "The gala's still happening tonight," Sarah continued. "The board decided it would look worse to cancel than to proceed. They're hoping to control the narrative by addressing the situation publicly." Michael had forgotten about the gala. The annual event was supposed to be a celebration of Hartwell Industries' success, complete with speeches by executives and recognition of top performers. Now it would be a public relations disaster. "Are you going?" Sarah asked. Michael looked at the invitation he'd received weeks ago, back when he was just the spouse of a rising executive. Now he was the architect of the company's biggest scandal. "Yes," he said. "I think I will." The Hartwell Industries annual gala was held at the Portland Art Museum, a venue chosen months earlier to project sophistication and cultural refinement. Michael arrived at 7 p.m. wearing his best suit, the same one he'd worn to his wedding 18 years earlier. The atmosphere was surreal. Guests clustered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones about the day's developments. Several people recognized Michael and pointed him out to others. A few brave souls approached to offer awkward condolences, as if he'd suffered a death in the family rather than orchestrated the destruction of his wife's career. Rachel was not in attendance. Neither was Victor Kane. Michael accepted a glass of wine from a passing server and positioned himself near the back of the main gallery, where he could observe without becoming the center of attention. The crowd was smaller than previous years. Several major clients and board members had apparently decided not to attend. At 8 p.m., the board chairman, an elderly man named Harrison Bell, took the microphone to address the assembled guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight during what has been a challenging day for our organization. I want to address the recent allegations directly and assure you that the board takes these matters seriously." The room fell silent. Bell looked uncomfortable, occasionally glancing at notes prepared by the company's legal team. "Effective immediately, Victor Kane has resigned as CEO and will have no further involvement with Hartwell Industries. We have initiated a comprehensive review of our workplace policies and procedures." and we are cooperating fully with all ongoing investigations. Polite but subdued applause followed. Bell introduced the interim CEO, a longtime board member who would oversee the company's transition. The new leader gave a brief speech about integrity and accountability, clearly attempting to distance the organization from Kane's actions. Michael was preparing to leave when he noticed a disturbance near the museum's main entrance. Rachel had arrived, apparently having decided to make an appearance despite her suspension. She looked terrible. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, her eyes red from crying or drinking or both. She pushed through the crowd toward the front of the room, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her. "Excuse me?" she called out, interrupting the interim CEO's remarks. "I'd like to say something." Security guards moved toward her, but she continued speaking, her voice carrying across the gallery. "Everyone here knows what happened. You've all read the stories, seen the pictures, but there's something you don't know." She swayed slightly, and Michael realized she was drunk. "Victor Kane didn't force himself on me. I chose to be with him. I chose to advance my career the easiest way possible." The room was absolutely silent now. Even the security guards had stopped approaching, unsure how to handle a public confession. "I threw away 18 years of marriage for a promotion I thought I deserved. And when my husband found out, instead of fighting for our relationship, I chose Victor over him." Rachel's voice broke. "I made those choices, not Victor. Me." She looked directly at Michael, who had moved closer to the front of the room during her speech. "You wanted your revenge, Michael. You got it. I hope it was worth destroying everything we built together." Then she walked out, leaving the gala in stunned silence. Harrison Bell quickly retook the microphone, thanking everyone for attending and suggesting the evening's formal program was concluded. Guests began filing out, eager to escape the toxic atmosphere. Michael remained in the gallery as the crowd thinned, processing Rachel's public breakdown. He'd achieved everything he'd set out to accomplish. Kane's career was over, Rachel's reputation was destroyed, and the pattern of maltreatment had been exposed. But Rachel's words echoed in his mind. "I hope it was worth destroying everything we built together." Had it been worth it? Jennifer Walsh appeared beside him, having attended the gala as part of her duties with the Morrison account. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I should be asking you that question. This started because Kane was targeting you." Jennifer nodded. "And now it's over. He can't hurt anyone else." She paused. "Your wife was wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "You didn't destroy what you built together. She did that when she chose Victor Kane over her marriage. You just made sure there were consequences." Michael looked around the gallery one final time. The evening had been a complete disaster for Hartwell Industries, but it had also been a moment of accountability that the company desperately needed. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we rebuild," Jennifer said. "The company, our careers, your life. We move forward and we do better." Michael nodded and walked toward the exit. Outside, the news vans were gone, and the parking lot was nearly empty. His truck sat alone under a streetlight, waiting to take him home to a future he'd have to construct from the ruins of his old life. He drove through downtown Portland, past the Hartwell building where lights still burned in a few offices, people working late to manage the crisis he'd created, past the coffee shop where he'd met Sarah to plan Kane's downfall, past the hotel where Kane had hidden the night before his empire collapsed. At home, Evan was waiting with a bottle of beer and a sympathetic expression. How was the gala? Michael sat down heavily on the couch. Rachel showed up, gave a speech admitting to everything. How do you feel about that? Michael considered the question. He felt empty, exhausted, and oddly peaceful. The rage that had sustained him for weeks was gone, replaced by something that might eventually become acceptance. "I feel like it's over," he said finally. "All of it." Evan handed him the beer. "Dad, I'm proud of what you did. Not the revenge part, the justice part. You stopped a predator and protected other women from what happened to those who came before." Michael smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in weeks. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They sat together in comfortable silence, father and son, survivors of a marriage that had been built on false foundations and destroyed by someone's ambition. Outside, Portland continued its life without Victor Kane's influence, without Rachel's deceptions, without the toxic culture that had flourished in the shadows of corporate power. 3 weeks later, Michael received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping about Hartwell Industries' new maltreatment prevention policies, and a handwritten note from Jennifer Walsh. "Thank you for having the courage to act when the rest of us were too afraid. The company is better because of what you did." Also in the envelope was a small object wrapped in tissue paper. Michael unwrapped it carefully, and found the vintage Cartier watch he'd bought for Rachel's promotion, the gift he'd left in Kane's office the day everything started. A final note from Sarah Patel explained, "Security found this in Victor's office when they cleaned out his desk. I thought you should have it back." Michael held the watch for a moment, remembering the hope he'd felt when he'd purchased it, the future he'd imagined when he'd planned to surprise Rachel with a symbol of her success. Then he walked to the kitchen trash can and dropped the watch inside, wrapping and all. Some surprises, he reflected, were better left unopened. Some gifts were better left ungiven. Some marriages were better left ended. Evan looked up from his homework. "Everything okay, Dad?" "Everything's fine," Michael said. "Everything's exactly as it should be." Outside, the sun was setting over Portland, casting long shadows across the city where Victor Kane had once wielded power, where Rachel had once climbed the corporate ladder, where Michael had once been a naive husband who believed in loyalty and trust. Now he was something else entirely, a man who understood that sometimes justice required patience, planning, and the willingness to watch everything burn down so something better could grow in its place. He opened his laptop and began researching apartment complexes closer to downtown. It was time to start over, time to build a new life on honest foundations, time to move forward without the weight of betrayal and broken promises. The revenge was complete. The healing could begin.